he brought me to the east gate, and behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the east, and his voice was like the noise of many waters, and the earth did shine with his glory. And the glory of Yahweh came into the temple through the east gate, and the glory of Yahweh did fill the house. And I heard him speaking to me out of the house. And he said to me, Son of man, the place of my throne, the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, forever in the place of my holy name. Now show them the temple to the house of Israel. Show them the design of the temple and measure the pattern. Show them the form and the seat of the house and the fashion and the comings and goings. This is the Torah of the house upon the top of the mountain. The whole limit thereof round about shall be holy. Behold, this is the law of the house. We're going to continue looking at the Millennial Temple. We're going to continue to look at this concept called sacred architecture. Guys, the concept of sacred architecture is such that the architect that builds something or designs something does so not for the simple fact of making something nice or beautiful or a certain color, but to convey a message, to teach, to instruct. That is what sacred architecture is. And when you have the Most High Yahweh giving us details, all those details are a message. All those details are an instruction, a law. That's why I said it's a law of the house. It's an instruction. And we're admonished to look at these details. We're admonished to study the pattern, understand the design, understand the elements. Okay, you could see in the beginning of this, when it was read, it was a city. Okay, so this isn't just one building. These are huge. These gates are like a temple in themselves. They're like 9-10 stories high. But what is this message? What is being conveyed to us? Some of the details in the architecture can actually instruct us very, very specific things. Like we've shared in the previous video, how this whole structure is a sundial. And we're going to look at that again, and something else that we don't even have a word in English. We don't have a word to measure the equinox and the solstice. We'll also just call it a sundial. But these gates that you're looking at actually measure time, okay? They're actually formatted in a way and oriented in a way where we could see precisely when certain solar alignments take place, okay? Now this is very important to us because the feasts of Yahweh will be instituted in the millennium, okay? So once we enter the millennium, there's the restoration of all things, including the feast of the Most High as he reigns in his temple. Now here's our sundial. This is the east gate. So the east gate, when we say that, basically what we mean is that the sun is rising in the east on the spring equinox. This is March 20th, okay? So when the sun rises in that east gate of the temple, it projects a perfect straight alignment, so that there's two east gates. There's one on the outside and there's one on the inside. The line between them is perfectly straight. Okay? So that's the east gate. Then what happens is, through the course of this day, so the sun rises, and here it's rising in the sky, and then it comes to a point right here at high noon. So whereas before we had our east gate is over here, we also have our south gate here. And now you can see the sun is in a southerly direction. It is the high peak point of the day, high noon. It is casting a shadow on the south gate, or there's actually two south gates, but you can see it's projecting a line, okay, which is a sundial. So at this marker, it proves the equinox, this line, okay? Now we have other points where this structure does this as well. So the year starts in the spring, okay? And so the east gate is opened on a precise day. It's open as we move the sun, okay? The east gate is open to start the year and to start this alignment where the door is open, giving us the perfect alignment of the equinox, okay? So on the spring equinox, we are instructed to open the east gate. That's the inner court east gate, which you see here. So let's remember what happened is that the shadow was coming off the outer court east gate, and the sun is rising perfectly in this alignment, and then this east gate is opened. So not only is the east gate opened, it is a feast day. So if we look at the calendar, you can see that on March 20th, or the spring equinox, that's the first day of the first month. Okay? And so what happens is on this day you would blow the trumpet. You will blow the trumpet to mark that's the first day of the month. And also on this day you would open the east gate. So the east gate is the marker of the year. That's why it's so important that the trumpet is blown, that we have all the proof and evidence of how to get the calendar right. And so the architecture and structure of the temple itself shows us that when you open this east gate, it is on the spring equinox, it lines up perfectly. And not only that, we also have the south gate contributing. So then we saw how the course of the day, the sun rises here and then it goes up in the sky. And then eventually at perfect high noon, the sun will be high and it would cast its shadow off the south gate, giving us the precise day of the equinox. So we have an alignment in the east gate, and then we have a marker of the shadow of the south gate. Now this is critical because throughout the course of the rest of the year, actually let's just talk about it real quick. What will happen is the rest of the year there are portals, or we call them tefuka, or these 4 days. So we have the equinox here, March 20th, and then we come to the summer solstice. That's going to be in the 4th month, okay? And then you can see what happens is that falls on the Shabbat, okay? This is the Shabbat. On the Sabbath, the east gate is open as well. So just like the east gate is open on the first day of the month, it's also open on the Sabbath. So when that east gate is open, sometimes that east gate opening lines up with the solstice and the equinox. So you can see that when it's on March 20th, when the east gate is open and it's the equinox, then on certain years, and this isn't every year, guys, because it's not always this alignment, but just so happen that the spring equinox falls perfectly on the 4th day. So the east gate is open on the Sabbath. Then, once we get to the fall, in the 7th month in the fall or autumn equinox is very close. It's actually on the 5th day. So the east gate is open on September 21st, but the next day is the equinox. Okay? Amazing. And then it happens again. So in December, when we get to the winter, we get to the 10th month, you'll see that December 21st also falls on the Sabbath. Okay, so each one of these days, the 4th day of the month, this 4th day of the 10th month, well, it's a Shabbat. It's a Sabbath. So the east gate is opened. So I don't know if you understand what's going on here, but what we can see is that when the east gate is open on the first day of the first month in the first year, it falls where the east gate opens on the Shabbats for the rest of the months, within a day or two. Okay, so this one is a difference of 1 day. But that's why this is so important, because once you get that first day, that first trumpet is blown, and it sets the course of that year, not only that year, but the next either 5 or 6 years. Very, very important. Our next significant solar date is the summer solstice. So now you can see that the sun has moved in a northerly direction on the horizon, and it's at its farthest point. Okay, this is 28 degrees from our perfectly centered point here. It's 28 degrees. And it's rising, and now you can see its shadow pointing towards the south. And then that's the east gate. So as well, the east gate is open on the Shabbat, on or very close to that. And then when we get our high noon, right about here, okay, then the south gate also proves this summer solstice, because the shadow, zoom in, get real close, see the shadow there? That shadow is giving us a marker of the summer solstice. So solstice means stand still. So it would stand still, it would come 3 days in a row on that marker, okay? And that marks the summer solstice through the southern gate, south gate. So in the temple, that is this building right here with the 7 on it. So we've gone with the spring equinox, and that we count one month, 2 months, 3 months. Then we come to this building here, and this is the 4th month, and the spring equinox happens in that 4th month. And as we said, the east gate is opened on that precise date. Why? Because you open the east gate on the Sabbath, and the Sabbath is the 4th day of the 4th month, and it's also the equinox. So again, the temple is showing us perfectly within the gates in these buildings, the months, the solstice, and the equinox. And let's remember that at the equinox, we also have our marker of the south gate. The summer solstice is the short one. Remember how we saw a small piece? So that's right here, okay? The summer solstice by the south gate. Then the next one would be the fall. In the fall, you can see that the sun has now moved back to position 4, the 4th portal, and it's aligning just like the spring equinox perfectly. And again, this one is very important because this is the tefukah of the marker to know when Tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles, takes place, okay? Very, very important, very significant to be on the right time for the feast, okay? So again, as it rises, we find our high noon marker again with the south gate, which we can see, okay? Then we would have the precise marker there to mark and determine the fall equinox, both by having a marker here from the south gate and having that east gate alignment that we showed you before, where it's perfectly aligned. Again, now we're back to portal number 4, back to the east gate, back to the sun rising and the alignment there in the east gate, and that would take place on September 22nd. But September 21st, the prior day, the east gate was opened. So the east gate is open on the Sabbath, the Shabbat. Okay, so that's the 4th day of the 7th month, but it's just a day difference to when the precise equinox for the fall takes place. So you'll notice here, and this is 2019, when we have all these amazing markers. You'll see the Feast of Trumpets. That's because in our present time, we still have the Feast of Trumpets. But in the Millennium, the Feast of Trumpets isn't recognized for just the 7th month. It's every month. The first day of every month you blow the trumpet. Okay, so every single month. But we know the first month is significant because it sets the rest of the year. Okay, so every first day of every month you blow the trumpet. But that fall, okay, East Gate opening on the Sabbath, you can see right next to the equinox. Next would be the Winter Solstice. And here the sun is rising in the east on the Winter Solstice. So you can see what the sun does is it's higher in the sky in the summer, it's midpoint in the equinox, and then it's lowest in the sky in the winter, in the northern hemisphere, of course. So here we have the sun rising, and then we can see as it rises in the sky, we then again get our marker. Let's look at that closely so you can see of the winter solstice. So more likely in the temple structure on the ground there would be markers on the ground of where each point is. That would give us the ability to measure time without any technology or devices, or the temple itself would be our measuring device with these gates. And so that's what's just amazing, is that the structure, again, this is why we talk about sacred architecture, is because the structure itself is a calendar, is a sundial, is a way of measuring the hours in the day. Okay, so you could have markers of like this, like a regular sundial, of points throughout the day as it moves. The sun moves in the sky to mark. You know, that could be like the buildings or some other design element. But we certainly know the east gate opening is very significant. And we also know that the south gate, giving us this alignment, will perfectly mark our equinox. So now we end up with the winter solstice. So what's happened is you have, just for those of you guys that are not real good with the months, the proper months and everything, so we went from September 22nd, that was the fall equinox, and then so it's like you have September 22nd, October 27th, November 22nd, and then December 21st. So you go 3 months. So each one of these buildings is a month. Okay, there's a certain number of degrees. There's 8 degrees on each building, and then that brings us to the first portal. In the first portal, you can see here, first portal is the 10th month. It's in the 10th month where the solstice, winter solstice, takes place. So the winter solstice takes place on December 21st. Again, that falls on the 4th day of the 10th month, and it's a Shabbat. So what that means is on the Shabbat, you open the east gate. So you open the east gate on the first day of the month and on each Shabbat. So in that 10th month, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 Shabbats. Okay? But within the first week of the first year, you can see that we have all 4 of the solar alignments of the equinox falling on days that we blow the trumpet and open the east gate. So you open the east gate here, March 20th. You open the east gate here, June 21st, Summer Solstice. Okay, in the fall, well, it's September 21st, but September 22nd is the fall autumn equinox. Okay, but you have the east gate opening, and then you have the east gate opening on December 21st on the 4th day of the 10th month. So that thus gives us the perfect structure of the building, showing us time. Now let's remember that the steps also were very important for us. So there's steps as you walk up into the outer gates. And there's 7 steps here, and then in the inner court gate there's 8 steps. So 7 times 8 is 56. So 56 is exactly the degrees that we have here. So if we go from our point right here from the altar, and you mark that to here from the altar in these buildings, that's 56 degrees. So our halfway point right here, between here and here, is 28 degrees. So what this means is each building just so happens to be the size of the degrees as the sun is moving on the horizon. Okay, so each building is a month. And so all you have to do is just look at the horizon and see where the sun is on the horizon. You know what the month is. Okay? And then what you would have is you would check for the when you're opening the east gate, when is it the time of the equinoxes and solstices, okay? Equinoxes. Now let's just take a look real close at where these will appear in terms of the degrees. So let's zoom in. Okay, so you can see where that is on our marker. It's about 118 degrees from 90 degrees. Okay? And the fall and spring you see right on the 90 degree marker there with the sun rising in the east. And here is the summer solstice, and you can see approximately where the sun is rising in the east. You can kind of barely see it there below the 60 some odd degree marker. So these are our positions of where the sun is rising in the horizon through the course of a year on the equinoxes and solstices. So that's just all amazing. It's all coded in the sacred architecture of the structure that this precise time would be there. So the concept of sacred architecture may seem a little bit strange, the idea of a building or a structure measuring time, but it's actually not totally unusual. The way a meter was determined was the length of cord necessary for it to travel 1 second. I think it's 1 second. You have to look it up. I can't remember. 1 second, 3 seconds. But the idea is that you put a weight at the end of a cord, and the distance, okay, for that to travel, it's not this, it's a meter. So the meter was determined by time, seconds, as you can see. All right? So this is the type of thing we've found coded throughout Scripture, is the idea of numbers and structures telling us time, telling us other elements. Now, there was a lot we mentioned in this that we need to go over the verses. And at this point, you may be wondering, why do I need to know this? Why is this important? Well, do you want any plagues? Probably not. Simple question, right? Well, in the millennium, what it says is the nations that don't come to Jerusalem, that don't come before the king, they'll be subject to plagues. Yes, in the millennium, they'll be subject to plagues. There'll be no rain. You can read about that in Zechariah chapter 14. Specifically, the Feast of Tabernacles. So if you don't come to Jerusalem as a nation during the Feast of Tabernacles, you'll be subject to curses, essentially, plagues. So we need to be on time. When is the feast? What time is the feast? Okay? So we've mentioned some things throughout the presentation, this one and the other one, that relate to feasts and different things that you may not understand. So let's go over them. When we see the Feast of Trumpets, you see the memorial of blowing trumpets, and that was instituted to be on the 7th month, okay? But actually it was supposed to happen every month. If we go to Numbers chapter 10, and we look at verse 10, also, so it's talking about blowing the trumpets. Verse 8, Aaron and sons shall blow the trumpets when they go to war. And verse 10, also on the day of gladness, in your solemn days, in the beginnings of your months. So you see, at the beginning of the month, you would blow the trumpets over your offerings, okay? So the book of Ezekiel doesn't say specifically that you blow a trumpet, but it does say that what? The east gate is opened on the beginning of the month. Okay, very important for us to understand. Now, the other word we've been using is tekufa. And the place we get this word is a few places in the Bible. We're just going to go to Exodus chapter 34, verse 22. It says, you shall observe the feast of weeks of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering. 3 times in the year all your men children shall appear before the Lord. Now this translation is not good. They don't want you to know the original Hebrew. The original Hebrew says, you will see the face of Yahweh, the Lord your God. That's what it really says. So here we can see this feast of ingathering at the year's end. Now again, if we look at the original Hebrew here, you'll see it's not the year's end, it's the year's tefuka. Now, when the King James was translated, and really we haven't known this since the Dead Sea Scrolls and we found the actual definition of this word was not known. So English translators, others said year's end. Okay, that would mean that the year would end in the fall, but it's not end, it's a tefuka. It's a solstice, equinox taking place, okay? So what it's saying is that the Feast of Tabernacles should have a connection to the fall equinox. Very important, because if you don't come to Jerusalem on the right time, you're subject to plagues. You see how important this is? So there we could see how the memorializing of the blowing of the trumpets has been the first day of each month, right? Okay, let's take a look at Psalms 81. This is another one we've been referencing. Blow the trumpet in the Kodesh, the first of the month. Blow the trumpet, right? Blow the trumpet in the time appointed. Now, this word in Hebrew is kesa, and it comes from fullness, to cover, conceal, and it seems to reference the fullness of the full moon and its festival. Okay, now, guys, what we're pointing out is that it's possible, of course, in the Old Testament that, they are following a lunar calendar. But what we're pointing out is as we go into a millennium, it's not a lunar calendar, it's a solar calendar. But the moon is observed. So, what is this saying? Blow the trumpet in the month, in the full moon of your solemn feast day. Wow. Well, what this is saying is exactly what we showed you on the calendar, is that we would have a full moon on the same day as the spring equinox. Okay, that's our solemn feast day. That's exactly what it's talking about. So you're blowing the trumpet on the solemn feast day, the first day of the first month. Now, Ezekiel does talk about this. Okay, in Ezekiel 45:18, in the first month, in the first day of the month, you shall cleanse the sanctuary. Okay, so it's a cleansing of the sanctuary, the cleansing of the temple. So that's on that precise day. Then when we get to Ezekiel 46, then we get to what we were talking about before. Thus says the Lord God, the gate of the inner court that looks towards the east shall be shut 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be open. Okay, so remember we were talking about the east gate and its opening. Well, it's closed 6 days, and it opens on the Shabbat. And in the day of the Kodesh, it shall be open. So when's the Kodesh? That's the first day, the day you blow the trumpet, on the first day of that month. The first day of every month. the trumpet is blown, or the east gate is open in this case, okay? In that day it shall be open. Likewise, the people of the land shall worship at the door of this gate before Yahweh in the Sabbaths and in the Kodesh, the first days of the month. So you can see that there's the keeping of the Sabbath, this keeping of coming to Yahweh on the east gate being open. So that's why it's so important to know when the Sabbath is, when the feasts are. So I'm extending all this energy to show you all the sacred architecture that shows us how the scriptures themselves tell us the time. The architecture of the Millennial Temple shows us the time, okay? So that we wouldn't be, going into error, following wrong calendars, being on the wrong day, trying to keep the feast. We need to be on the precise day. So we know a lot of you struggle with the Enoch calendar we've submitted on this channel, but what we're trying to show you is it may take some effort, it may be difficult at first, but once you get on it, then you're like, wow, this is right. So that's why we're going through the video. We're showing you the sundial in the temple. We're showing you the temple showing time. We're showing you these feasts. We're going to show you more of the feasts that are kept in the millennium. And this is part of our series, guys, on the show the design, show the patterns, show the structure of the temple to the people. So you see that worship, okay? Worship is coming before the face of Yahweh. You will see the face of Yahweh. That's what it says. 3 times a year you're supposed to go. When is it? What time? How do you know? Well, if you follow the moon, you could be off by a month. All right? But if we follow these Tefuka, you can see the Tefuka leads us to the Feast of Tabernacles. So guys, thanks for watching. Our next video is going to be on the Feast of Yahweh in the millennium. And we want to keep them now. We want to prepare ourselves now to enter into that new era of time. So guys, thanks for watching. And as we say, our banner over there, fear God, give glory to him. For the hour of his judgment is come. Worship him that made the heavens, the earth, the seas, and the fountains of waters. Amen.